The end goal of apologetics or evangelism is not to win a debate, but it's to win souls for Christ. A lot of us have Muslim friends, Muslim neighbors, and Muslim colleagues, and a lot of other people. How do we understand the Islamic worldview? How do we engage Muslims in a winsome, gracious, but an incisive way? After today's session, we hope and pray that you will have a basic understanding about Muslims and what they believe in, and you will know how to engage with Muslims in a gracious and a loving way. Welcome to our YouTube channel, folks. We as a channel would love for you to live a Christ-centered life. We post contents related to apologetics, Christian living, theology, and much more. We have a special guest here with us today. Yes, we have Alan Shlemon on our channel this time. Alan Shlemon is an author and a speaker for Stand to Reason, a ministry that trains and equips Christians to share and defend their faith. He's an author of the book, The Ambassador's Guide to Islam and The Ambassador's Guide to Homosexuality. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining our show today. It's so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Lloyd. It's a pleasure to be with a brother in Christ today and to talk about the subject. It's super important, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. To kickstart this conversation, Alan, can you just tell us a little bit about your family and where you're from and what do you do?
Well, I was born and raised in the United States. For the most part, I did live in England for about 4 years. But my family is not from the United States. My parents and all my relatives were born in Baghdad, Iraq. So ethnically, I am what's called Assyrian. Now, this is not the same thing as Syrian, like from the country Syria, but we are Assyrians. So if you're familiar with the Old Testament history, you'll recall the Assyrian people are talked a lot about in the Old Testament. Those are my people. We are direct descendants. I'm 100% Assyrian, and I speak Assyrian. So, but I did grow up in the United States, and I went to university here. I studied physical therapy, and I was a physical therapist, which is a person who does rehabilitation on people who are hospitalized and injured. And it was through the university I met my wife. Her name is Jennifer. We've been married for 23 years now, and we have 2 children, and we live in San Diego, which is in the state of California, which is on the western part of the United States. Mm-hmm. And after I worked as a physical therapist for 10 years, I eventually ran across Greg Kokel, who is the founder and president of an organization called Stand to Reason, which is an organization that teaches apologetics to believers. And after doing some volunteer work for them, I joined Stand to Reason and started working with them. And I have been working with Stand to Reason now for 17 years. And it's been just amazing. I'm very humbled and privileged to work with them because it's a fantastic organization. And I've been able to partner with them, basically doing what I'm doing here with you, which is talking about the subject of apologetics as it pertains to many things. So I cover things like Islam, abortion, homosexuality or sexuality, general evangelism, and stuff like that. So that's a summary of kind of where I am right now.
All right. Can you just share us a little bit about the reason why you wrote this, The Ambassador's Guide to Islam? Is there any reason behind that, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, the general reason is that as an organization at Stand to Reason, one of the things we want to do is produce training materials, because our mission and my mission is to train Christians to persuasively yet graciously share what they believe with people who don't agree with them. And so creating this booklet was one of the ways we were able to do that. stand to reason many years ago, after the events of September 11th, 2001, where the terrorists attacked the United States, this made people in the United States wonder more about Islam. And so Stand to Reason asked me to write this book because my family is from the Middle East. So I have more familiarity with that culture, not a lot more, but a little bit more than the average American here. And so they assigned to me the one who could study a little bit more about Islam and become equipped to train Christians on that subject. And so they said, here's a book we want you to write. And specifically what I wanted to do is just give a very short overview of Islam in the book, and then also provide a couple of tactics, just tools that people can have to engage Islam. So the book is not meant to be exhaustive. It's not meant to be fully giving everything there is to know about Islam. It's just meant to give an overview and a couple of helpful tools to help the Christian when they engage a Muslim friend or neighbor.
When we see ISIS, they portray a different version of the Islamic worldview. I mean, when I say different, ISIS portrays a very violent version of the world of the Islamic worldview. And when I see my friend, he portrays a very gentle and a kind version of the Islamic worldview. How do we know what to believe about the Islamic worldview, Alan?
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So sometimes you see like ISIS doing very violent things, but then we have Muslim friends and neighbors that might be very kind and peaceful. So how do you know what is truly the correct version of Islam? Is that what you're asking? Oh, okay, yes. So this is a good question, and actually, in my book, I have a tactic that I teach, a tool that I use myself and encourage others to use in order to determine whether a teaching in Islam or a teaching or behavior in Islam is truly Islamic or not. Because as you're pointing out, there are many different expressions of how Muslims behave, And so I've had Muslims who say it's okay to drink alcohol, right? I've had Muslims who say it's wrong to drink alcohol. As you mentioned, there's some who engage in violent acts with terrorist groups. My own family in Iraq was persecuted by Muslims many times. So the way that I try to approach this question is I realized that what matters in Islam is authority. If you want to know whether a teaching or a behavior or a practice is truly a part of Islam or just a part of the culture, then what you have to look at is authoritative sources in Islam. And there are many sources in Islam that are authoritative, but the three that I like to look at are the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. Now, the Quran is probably the one that most people know about. This is what Muslims believe is the literal words of Allah. Okay, so not the inspired words of Allah, like we believe the Bible is the inspired word of God. They believe that the Quran is the literal words of Allah. And this is the highest authority in Islam, no matter whether a Muslim is Sunni or Shia or whatever. Okay, so that's one source. A second source is the Hadith. And Hadith literature is written traditions, like that might be a sentence long or a paragraph long or a page long. So they're written traditions of what Muhammad either said or approved of. So if in everyday conversation when Muhammad was alive, if he said something about marriage or divorce or about warfare and fighting or about prayer or about fasting, whatever Muhammad said was considered to be authoritative, was considered to be trustworthy. And so people many times wrote down what he said. Many, many years after his death, they wrote it down. But they remembered what he said and eventually wrote it down. And this is now a part of what's called hadith literature. This is also very important. And if you've heard of Sharia law is Islamic law that is put in many Muslim countries, like Saudi Arabia or Iran. Many of these countries have Islamic laws that govern how the people should live. And where do Sharia laws come from? They come, a lot of them, from hadith literature, these things that Muhammad said. So that's the second source of authority. A third source of authority is the Sunnah. And the Sunnah is the life example of Muhammad. So Muslims believe that how Muhammad lived is important for them to look at and study and then to copy. So what we have then are three sources of authority: the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. And if you want to know, is what my Muslim friend or neighbor, is what he's doing, is this truly a part of Islam, or is this just like he made it up or a part of the culture? Well, you look at these three sources. Is this practice found in those three sources or not? If it's found and taught in those three sources, then you can say, yes, this is truly a part of Islam. But if it's not found in those three sources or rejected by those three sources, then it's not Islamic. And what I've discovered is that when I go to a mosque, either in the Middle East or here in the United States, and I talk to Muslims, many Muslims will tell me all kinds of different things about what they believe Islam is. But then I say, well, show me in the Quran or the Hadith or the Sunnah, where is this? And sometimes they can't show me because it's not in there. And so I say, well, then you can't say that this is a true teaching of Islam. So this is the tactic that I use to help me determine whether a teaching is truly Islamic or not. And when it comes to things like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, right, these terrorist groups, the question I'm asking is violent jihad a valid doctrine in Islam? And again, the answer to that question is not by looking to a Muslim neighbor or friend and saying, what do you think? No, they might tell you the truth, or maybe they won't. I don't know, But what matters is, well, is violent jihad taught in the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah? And, I don't know if we wanted to go into that question specifically, but there is a lot taught in the Quran, the Hadith, and Sunnah that teach this. It doesn't mean that every Muslim practices it or follows it, but it is a part of the true Islamic religion.
All right. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much for that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the next question that I have was, you spoke about three authoritative sources, right? So
Yes.
what are the core beliefs and behaviors followed by Muslims, and how important is it to them? Can you just
What was the word?
well, what are the core beliefs and behaviors followed by Muslims?
Oh, what are the core beliefs?
And core behaviors.
Oh, and behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when it comes to the behaviors, there are they are called the 5 pillars of Islam. These are 5 required behaviors that Muslims must engage in. Okay. The first one is called reciting the creed, or the shahada. Okay. This is a very short statement that a Muslim must make. And the statement is this: there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, or Muhammad is his prophet. And of course, they would say it in Arabic or whatever. But this is an essential behavior that every Muslim must do. In fact, if you wanted to become a Muslim, all you have to do is say this creed, and then you will have started your journey as a Muslim. So that's the first behavior. Second behavior is daily prayer. Muslims must pray 5 times a day, at sunrise, at noon, at mid-afternoon, at sunset, and just before they go to bed. And then on Fridays, they have an extended period of prayer and worship time. And that's usually when I go to the mosque, is on Fridays, because there's more Muslims there. A third required behavior in Islam is the fast of Ramadan. And this is a fasting for 1 month. And it's no eating, drinking, smoking, or sex during the daylight hours of the day. So from sunrise to sunset, they can't have any of this. And the purpose of this fast, which lasts for 1 month, is to commemorate, is to honor when Muhammad received the Quran. Okay. Another required behavior in Islam is um, the giving of tithe or alms. So that's like giving money that goes towards serving the poor and the needy in the community. And then the fifth one is the pilgrimage to Mecca. So once in the lifetime of a Muslim, at least once, you are required to travel to Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia, and for a period of a week or so, perform a number of different rituals. You're allowed to do this more than once in your life, but you have to do it at least once in your life. Okay? So those are the required behaviors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you say you also want to talk about the required beliefs?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you there's 6 of them, six required beliefs. They're called the articles of faith. I'll say them quicker, and if you want to have more details about one of them, you can ask me.
Yeah.
But the first one is the belief in the unity of God. So Muslims must believe there's only one God. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the belief in God's angels. Muslims must believe that there are angels that exist, and we can talk about, these angels if you want, but they'll tell you that there are 2 angels that follow each and every one of us throughout our life. One angel keeps track of all your good deeds. Another angel keeps track of all your bad deeds. A third required belief is believing in the prophets of Allah. So there isn't just Muhammad. There are also many other prophets like David and Moses and Adam and all these other people. And there's some very interesting things there, because actually Jesus is a prophet in Islam, which means Muslims are required to believe in Jesus. But of course, they don't believe in the same kind of Jesus, like the true Jesus. But anyways, if you wanted to talk more about that, we could as well. Another required belief is belief in God's books. So Muslims will say that Allah has several books, not just the Quran, but there were other books that were given to other prophets. The Quran was only given to Muhammad, but there was the Psalms that are found in the Old Testament. Those were given to the prophet David. The Torah, which are the first 5 books, of the Bible, those books were given to the prophet Moses. And they also would say that Jesus was given a book called the Gospel. So this gets very, very interesting when we want to understand this, because we can use that as we engage Muslims in conversation. But anyways, that's another required belief, is belief in God's books. And then there's 2 more. There's belief in the final judgment. So this means that Muslims must believe at the end of time, everyone will be resurrected and they will be judged according to their behaviors, to their deeds. Okay. And those who did mostly good will go to heaven. Those who do mostly bad will be sent to hell. And then the final belief, the 6th one, is belief in, I guess the best way to say it is divine destiny or predestination. And this is kind of like Allah, everything that happens in life happens according to the will of Allah. So it is a complex idea, but this is another required belief. So those are the 6 articles of faith, the required beliefs.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the next question, a lot of us, I hear this from a lot of Christians as well. Christians, they say that do Muslims and Christian worship the same God? What will be your response for that? I watched a video of yours and it was brilliant the way you explained it. So can you just explain that to the audience who are watching now?
Sure. So I don't know about in India, but in the United States, there are many Christians who differ on this question. Some say Muslims and Christians worship the same God. Others say Muslims and Christians do not worship the same God. Okay. My view is that we do not worship the same God. And let me try to explain why. This is my opinion. The word God, at least in English, right? The word God is not God's name. The word God is more like the title of a position. It's more like an office. So, for example, if you just think of the president of the United States, okay, the president of the United States is a person, but it's also a title of a position. It's an office, okay, and there's a difference between the office of the president of the United States and the person who occupies that office, the person who's in that office, right? Now, in the United States and in virtually every other country, I'm sure India, there are different people who over the years become the person who occupies the president or the prime minister or the king or whatever it might be, okay? So there's a difference between the office of that position and the person who occupies that office, okay? Now, in the United States, this office of the president of the United States has certain powers, right? The power to nominate judges, to cancel certain laws, and so on and so forth. Okay, and over time, as I said, different people are the persons who occupy that office. Now, when it comes to the word God, the God is more like the title of a position. Okay, and the office of God or the title of God is someone who can create the universe, who can hear prayer and answer prayer, who can run his kingdom. But Muslims and Christians have a different idea of who the person is that occupies that office. Muslims say the person who occupies the office of God is Allah. Christians would say that the person who occupies the office of God is Yahweh, or this is the name. I don't know if in India you use this phrase, Yahweh, but in the English Bible, Yahweh is considered the name of God, okay? So you have the office of God, but you have different persons who claim to be the one who occupies that office. Muslims say it's Allah, Christians say it's Yahweh. Now, when you study the characteristics of Allah and Yahweh, you come to realize that they are very, very different persons, okay? Allah is a Unitarian God, which means there is only one God, and this one God exists as one person. Yahweh is a Trinitarian God, which means one God who exists as three persons: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay? Allah does not have a son. Yahweh has a son, right? Allah is the word is transcendent, which just means that Allah is separate from the universe. He is separate from his creation. Now, in Christianity, we would say Yahweh is also separate from his creation. He's transcendent. But there's another word, which is the word immanent, which simply means that although God, Yahweh, is separate from his creation, he also enters into creation and develops a relationship with those creatures that he created. And Jesus is an example of Yahweh entering into creation and developing a relationship with his created beings. So you could look at all these characteristics of Allah and Yahweh and come to realize that they are totally different persons. And so this is why when it comes to this question, do Muslims and Christians worship the same God? It's easy or tempting for us to think, well, of course, because we both believe in the same office of God, the same title, God. But when we look at the person who we are claiming is the one that fills that office or occupies that position, these two persons are completely different. So that's one one reason why I say it seems like that we're talking about two different gods. We're not worshiping the same God. But let me answer the question another way. And this is how I've often said it to my Muslim friends. I say, look, if Jesus was to appear right in front of us right now, okay? And sometimes I'm in a big room with a lot of people, right? And I say, imagine Jesus was to appear right before us and stand there. Everyone in that room who is a Christian would bow down and worship that man, Jesus, as God. But there is no way that any Muslim would ever bow down and worship Jesus as God. Why? Because for a Christian to worship Jesus is a wonderful, beautiful act of devotion. But for a Muslim to worship Jesus as God is to commit the worst sin in Islam. It's called the sin of shirk, and it will guarantee send you to hell forever. So how can it be that Christians and Muslims both worship the same God when we both do not worship Jesus as God? Right? A Muslim would never worship Jesus as God, but Jesus, he is our God. So this is why I say we don't worship the same God, because we don't both worship Jesus.
True, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
So this will be my next question: is Islam a peaceful religion? So what do you think about that?
Is Islam a peaceful religion? Well, it depends on how you want to answer that. Um, are most Muslims that I engage with, that I talk to, that I know, are they generally peaceful people? Absolutely. I mean, my father used to work in the Middle East, and he would travel to the Middle East, and we'd have his coworkers come from the Middle East. They'd come to visit our home. When they come, they bring gifts. They are very respectful of our traditions and of our home. When I go to mosques, I'm always welcomed. When I go to the Middle East and I go to a Muslim's home, they cook a huge meal for me. They welcome me. They know I'm a Christian. So is most of my experience with Muslims peaceful? Of course, absolutely. Okay. So if we're asking the question, are most Muslims peaceful? I would say, yeah. I mean, my experience is, yeah, of course, most Muslims are peaceful. But if we go back to that previous question, or that topic we were talking about, does Islam teach that violent jihad is a valid doctrine? Well, the answer is, of course, yes. There are 164 verses in the Quran that teach about violent jihad. So the Quran teaches that violent jihad is a valid doctrine. If you just wanted to see two chapters, chapter 8 and chapter 9, the chapters in the Quran are called surah. So surah 8 and surah 9 have the largest number of verses talking about the nature of fighting and engaging in jihad. Okay, the hadith, which remember is what Muhammad said or approved of, has a whole section called the Book of Jihad, which details all the things that Muhammad said with his mouth about how to fight, how to kill, who should die. People who leave Islam, he says, whoever changes his Islamic religion, kill him. I mean, all those details are all found in there. People who engage in homosexuality are to be killed. And then if you look at the Sunnah, which is the life example of Muhammad, I have a book on my bookshelf here called The Life of Muhammad. It's the earliest biography of Muhammad that exists. And it was written by Muslims, by a Muslim, Ibn Ishaq. And if you read his life story, he was engaged in warfare for the last 10 years of his life before he died. The last 10 years of his life when he was teaching Islam, he attacked caravans in order to steal their money. He ordered the assassination of innocent people who were, not combatants, not people who were fighting. He gathered an army of 10,000 soldiers and attacked and conquered the city of Mecca. I mean, he did many things. Now, did they just attack for no reason? No. I mean, sometimes they were doing it for certain reasons. But the point I'm making is that violent jihad, and I say violent jihad because the word jihad just means struggle. And there's many kinds of struggles. There's the struggle of the heart, the struggle of your mind and your heart and your tongue. But there's also a struggle to fight. And this violent jihad is absolutely taught in the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. Fortunately, most Muslims are not people who look very closely at their religious text, and therefore they don't practice violent jihad. So this is the tension, right? Yes, it's taught in Islam according to the most authoritative sources, but thankfully most Muslims don't live consistently with their teachings. Okay, and so therefore most Muslims, I don't know if I can say for the whole world, but the vast majority of Muslims that I interact with have never been aggressive or mean to me. They protest me when I go speak at a university. They'll protest and say, "Get Alan off the university," but they've never attempted to hurt me.
True. That makes a lot of sense, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay, so the next question that I have is, when you engage Muslims, what are some common objections that they raise? What are some common objections?
Oh, well, probably so there's a lot of objections. They'll say that we Christians believe in three gods, right? Because we say the Father's God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. They say, oh, well, you believe in three gods. This is polytheism. This is wrong. So this is just a misunderstanding, of course, of the Trinity, of Trinitarian doctrine. And so as a Christian, we have to understand what is a Trinity and how to explain it in a way that's not polytheistic. But I would say the most common objection by far is that the Bible is corrupted. Okay. And the reason why I find that this is the most common objection is because, remember, two of the required beliefs in Islam are belief in God's books and belief in God's prophets. Okay. So Muslims must believe Jesus is a prophet of Allah. Okay. Not the divine Son of God, not the second person of the Trinity, just a human as a prophet. But they also believe that Allah gave Jesus a gospel, the gospel, right? Now, if you turn as a Christian to your Muslim friend and say, hey, look, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, this is the gospel. Look at what Jesus did. He claimed to be one with the Father. He claimed to die and rise again, die on the cross, rise again. And Muslims deny all of this. And I say, but look, it's right here in the gospel. You say the gospel is the word of Allah. And the Muslim will say, no. The gospel, the Torah, the Psalms, these are all corrupted. Only the Quran has remained free from being corrupted. But the gospel is corrupted, the Torah is corrupted, and the Psalms is corrupted. So this is perhaps the most common objection. And Lloyd, I would tell you that it's probably the most important objection, because when I'm talking to a Muslim, my main prayer and hope is to be able to tell them who the true Jesus is. And the only way I can do that is if I can point them to read the Gospels. But they're going to say the Gospels are corrupted, so we can't look at the Gospels. So this is the biggest objection, and I think the biggest obstacle to evangelism.
And how will you actually prove, or how will you try to defend the truth, Alan, in a more gracious and in a loving way?
Yes. So there's many ways to do this. So I'm not trying to tell you that this is the best way, but the way that I like to do it is I like to use, I know this sounds a little bit strange, I like to use the Quran to address their objection. Okay. So remember, I'm trying to show them who Jesus is from the Bible, from the gospel. They say, no, the gospel is corrupted. Okay, so that's their objection. Now, I want to eliminate their objection. And so here's what I do. I point out that the Quran teaches two principles that are very important. Number one, the Quran teaches that no one can change the words of a law. And I have in my book probably 9 or so, I can't remember now, but I know I have at least 12 or so verses in the Quran that teach no one can change the words of God. And it says it over and over. No one can change the words of Allah. The words of Allah can never be altered. There can be no corruption in the words of Allah. I mean, the Quran says this over and over and over again. Okay, so that's the first point. No one can change the words of Allah. The second thing that the Quran teaches is that the gospel is an example of the word of Allah. And this is written multiple places in the Quran as well, And in fact, not just the gospel, but remember I said also the Torah and the Psalms. Okay. So think now logically with me for a moment. If no one can change the words of Allah and the gospel is the word of Allah, well then by logical deduction, the gospel is the unchanged word of Allah. And so what I'm doing is I'm using the Quran to show the Muslim that their objection is incorrect, is false. And so what that does is it removes the objection from our conversation. And the reason I like to use this approach is because for the Muslim, the Quran is the highest authority in all of the world. So whatever the Quran teaches, they must believe. And so again, I'm not trying to say that I believe the Bible is the word of Allah. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to say that I believe the Bible is God's word and not corrupted because the Quran tells me. No. I'm just simply saying from the perspective of the Muslim, I'm going to show them that their own authority tells them they should not make this objection that the Bible is corrupted because their own authority says it's not corrupted. And by the way, Lloyd, I looked at this. Muhammad died in 632 AD. There was not a single Muslim who ever claimed the Bible was corrupted for about 400 to 500 years until after like 1000 AD. Then you start seeing that. But this was not an original belief. This is something that started much, much later. So it's very interesting. It's something that was created by Muslims, but it's not a part of Orthodox Islamic theology.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next question, that's a more practical question, I guess. How to start a conversation with a Muslim? I mean, I'm pretty sure, you'll have a lot of ways, but can you just share our audience?
How to start a conversation with a Muslim?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're just talking about a general conversation, of course, general conversations just simply begin by being in a relationship with someone, right? So I strongly encourage all of us to, pursue our relationships with our Muslim friends and neighbors. I have developed a relationship with many Muslims at the mosque because I go very often. I take Christians to mosques on a regular basis. So it's we build relationships by doing this. But I'm assuming, Lloyd, that what you're asking is how to bring up a conversation about our own faith. Is this what you're kind of?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So again, you're right. There's many ways to do it, but here's how I like to do it, because as I said before, my hope and prayer is to get to talking about Jesus and the gospel. And the fastest way I can get to that conversation is by asking this question. I asked the Muslim, and by the way, Muslims are very comfortable talking about their religion, usually their faith is what I found. So here's what I asked the Muslim. I say, are you 100% certain that you are going to go to heaven when you die? Now, I've never had a Muslim say to me, yes, I'm 100% certain. And the reason they can't say they're 100% certain is because whether they go to heaven or they go to hell is dependent upon all the good and bad deeds they've done. Do the good deeds outweigh the bad deeds, or do the bad deeds outweigh the good deeds? And they have no way of knowing what that is going to be. So they always tell me, no, I don't have 100% certainty. Now, by the way, Lloyd, notice my question. I didn't ask them, are you confident that you're going to heaven? I asked them, are you 100% certain you're going to heaven? So they always say, no, I'm not 100% certain. And so then my follow-up question is this: would you like to have 100% certainty? Now, at this point, the Muslim either is just curious, well, how can this Christian assure me 100% certainty? Or they actually just really want to know. And what can we as Christians tell them about the gospel that would help them to better understand how they could have 100% certainty? Well, we can talk to them about Jesus and the gospel and how Jesus' death atones for 100% of our sins and can give us that assurance that we can be saved. So notice, by asking this one question, are you 100% certain you're going to heaven? And they say no. I say, well, would you like to know? Now I can start to share with them about the gospel, which again is a book that the Quran says is a book from Allah, and tell them about Jesus, who they must believe is a prophet and they must listen to. So again, I'm using my knowledge and understanding of Islam to more effectively communicate the truth to them. And so by asking that question, that's how I can get into a conversation very quickly and begin sharing the gospel. In less than a minute, I can be there talking about Jesus.
What are some tips that you want to give while they're evangelizing? To our friends who want to evangelize with Muslims. What are some tips that you want to give, Alan?
Well, I mean, general tips we've kind of sort of already talked about. I mean, I think the most, as you probably know, because you definitely have more Muslims in your country than in my country. But for me, what I found super helpful, very helpful, is to build relationships and friendships. So, I mean, this applies to anyone, whether they're a Muslim or an atheist or a Hindu or whatever, it doesn't matter. I found that when I build friendships and relationships and I'm respectful of people, that this provides a bridge. Relationships are like a bridge by which we can communicate truth and show love and compassion. So that's number one. Number two, I would say use questions to engage your friend or neighbor who might be a Muslim. And Lloyd, I don't know, I know you mentioned that you're familiar with Stand to Reason, where I work for. One of the tactics that we teach at Stand to Reason, we call it the Columbo tactic. But all this tactic is simply the art of asking questions, certain kinds of questions, because questions show that you care about a person. Questions show that you are interested in their opinion. Questions are respectful of another person. Asking questions also is very disarming. It puts people at ease. So using questions to find out more about your friend or neighbor is an important tactic, and that shows that you care about them, and that helps to build the relationship that I said is the first tip. So build a relationship, use questions to engage a person and to come to understand their view better. Of course, number three, I said that always take what they're saying and try to judge it based upon what the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah say to better know whether what they're saying is truly Islamic or not, you know? And then number four, I would say focus on the gospel. I hear Christians come to Muslims and try to bring up all different kinds of subjects, but most of those subjects are a distraction from the main thing. And I think the main thing is the gospel. But I see many Christians say, well, I've studied about jihad, and so I'm going to talk to my Muslim friend about jihad. Look, the questions about jihad are a very interesting question. Don't get me wrong. I'm very fascinated by this discussion. But every time that I've been in a conversation with a Muslim about this topic, it simply raises their defenses and makes them less likely to want to talk to you, because they think that you believe that every Muslim is a jihadi, a terrorist, and it just makes them feel uncomfortable, and it doesn't help to contribute to a healthy conversation that can move towards the gospel. Sometimes I hear Christians bring up how Muhammad, when he was 50 something years old, married a young girl named Aisha when she was only 6 years old. Okay. Now, it's true. He did do this, and this is very upsetting and I think wrong. But a lot of Christians like to bring this up to Muslims, but what ends up happening is the Muslim just gets defensive and his walls come up, and he becomes more resistant to wanting to have a further dialogue. So I tell them, look, focus on the gospel and avoid topics that distract from the gospel. Okay. Don't worry about their view about Muhammad and marriage or jihad or whatever. Look, focus on Jesus. This is what matters. If they eventually trust in Christ, then the Holy Spirit will come into their life, transform them from the inside out, and then eventually all of their views about Muhammad or marrying little girls or jihad will eventually change as well. So focus on what matters.
True. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing a Christ-centered message. And we hope and pray that, people who are watching, that you will also apply this. And we just pray that, our goal of this channel is to just equip believers to go and preach the gospel and share it to others in a Christ-like way. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much for sharing and answering these questions that are so important. And for the people who are new to this channel, we just want to share a little bit. We post contents related to apologetics, theology, Christian living, and much more. If you're interested in our channel, you can check out the other videos that we have posted in our channel, and we'll be attaching the links to Alan's books in our description below, so you can check that out as well. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Thank you so much, Alan.
My pleasure, Lloyd. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.